Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Books. We've got a very special episode today with a very special guest, Jonathan Javier from Consulting. We just wanted to pop in and say, stay past the outro for a very special offer from Jonathan. He's being very generous, and we don't want you to miss it. So, otherwise, enjoy the show, and we'll see you soon.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Books, the show where we help you survive and thrive in life after college and really beyond. Today we're going to be talking about, in my mind, like top 3 most valuable skills as a professional, and that's networking. And to learn more about networking, we have a very, very special guest. He is a close friend of mine. You all know him as Jonathan Javier from Consulting. He is the founder and CEO of Consulting. You know him with his more than 3 million followers across social media. You know him on 30 Under 30 Forbes. Him and Jerry have an amazing story. He's also worked at Cisco. He's worked at Snap. He's worked at Google, where he and I were essentially close friends. We played basketball together. He was top 3 players. I wrote top 5 initially, but I thought about it. It's actually top 3 players on our IM basketball team where we took it all the way and won. And most importantly, he shares the same vision and passion that Boba Talks has for helping others. So, Jonathan, welcome to the show. Tyler, always good to have you. How are you guys doing, man?
Doing incredible. Ben didn't mention that he was top 2. So he was number 2 and I was number 3. I don't know who number 1 was, but
wow,
he forgot to mention that. But I'm doing amazing. Thanks for the invite again.
Absolutely.
And I'm especially stoked because I actually haven't met Jonathan before. This is our first time meeting, and we're talking about networking, so it feels very apt. So here we are, just here to network and have a good time. So let's do it. Basically, as we look into this topic of networking, it's something that I think, as I've had a lot of mentees talk about with me, it feels like this kind of nebulous concept. It's like they need to go and meet people, but are they supposed to have a purpose for meeting people, or what are they supposed to do? So I thought to kind of kick us off and start, I would just kind of kick it to you, Jonathan, to ask kind of what's your definition of networking and why do you feel that it's kind of important to maintain a network?
Yes, networking is something that everybody should do and can do. And I remember for me, I always thought networking was something that only people from top universities and those with connections only could do. And I thought this because whenever I reached out to someone, they wouldn't respond or I'd get a very low response rate. And I say to myself, oh, it just has to do with my background. But networking is reaching out to someone, making that connection, and establishing them either as a mentor, a champion, or someone that could potentially get you an opportunity, whether it's a job, whether it's a career, whether it's a specific project. And I always encourage people to use LinkedIn to make sure that they're networking with people who share a commonality between you and the other person. It could be the same university. It could be the same organization. If you all are part of Boba Talks, network with people who have the same vision as you. And so there are so many different capabilities of networking, which can lead to job opportunities, speaking opportunities, and opportunities like this. So again, networking has been something that I've was at first not as strong at, but just through repetition and through just actions and executing was able to get a lot better at.
Awesome. I actually have one quick question just because it's top of mind for me from a conversation I had the other day, but the idea that you can't be good at networking and then can get better at networking. I've had some folks ask me, it kind of feels like you're trying to make a new friend, but it's a professional friend, but it feels like this kind of new type of relationship that, in college we may not have had to try to have. And so kind of how do you think about it, the relationship itself when you're networking? How do you kind of think about it when it's, the connection between two people in this new context?
Networking is a two-way street. And if you're the one who is initiating the networking, you should be doing your best to provide as much value as possible to the person that you are reaching out to. Nowadays, and what I've seen a lot from many different people is they'll reach out, they'll say, hey, give me a job at Google. Ben, that probably happens to you a bunch, right? Hey, give me a job at Google. That's it. But if you are the person who's reaching out, you should definitely try to provide value. And people will ask, well, Jonathan, how do I provide value? It doesn't have to be money or compensation. It doesn't have to be anything like that. If they create content, engage with their content. If they're a part of a community, give them feedback on the community or tell people about that community. So when you are networking, you have to make sure that you're providing value, because that will get you the most response. Those will get you the most responses, rather than you simply saying, "Hey, do this for me." It has to be a two-way street, because when you provide value first, the person will then say, "Well, how can I provide value to you?" And that's when you do your pitch of, "Oh, I need help with this. Could you help me?"
And I was going to say, sometimes value doesn't necessarily even have to be valuable. It can be something as simple as gratitude. It can be something as simple as reporting back after you've had a first conversation with the mentor. Be like, hey, that feedback, Jonathan, that you gave me, or I watched your TikTok and that really helped me, and I used it and actually got an interview. That also adds inherent value to someone who's willing to help, but now gets good feedback on how to continue to help others. So I just want to speak as a mentor of a lot of folks. Like, that could also be inherent value for me as well.
And to add to that, Ben, when you're networking with people, it doesn't have to be, okay, you have to give me something and I have to give something back to you. It could just be a simple update. For example, Ben and I have stayed in touch for 6 years. It's crazy, right? Think about it. 2018 was the time we first met, when I was at Google and he was at Google as well. But we stayed connected with each other, send him updates every 6 months, right, Ben? Every 6 months to a year, just saying, hey, this is what I've been up to. Ben also tells me of what he's been up to. And so there's that relationship there where networking became not only, synonymous in terms of for career, but friendship. So you never know what will happen when you're networking with so many different folks.
You never know. You never know. And can I also add another point here? And then Tyler, I'll hand it over to you to chime in. I think it's important to recognize there are a couple different forms of networking. I want to just put two different kinds of cuts and put it out there, let you all respond to it. To me, the first one is more of a social connection that's maybe a little bit surface level. There are real uses and values to that type of networking. You go to a campus recruiting event. You go to a sorority recruiting event or mixer. That it's important to be able to go into a room full of strangers and be able to network in that way and build a connection. But I always would argue the more valuable skill set, and probably the one that we're going to spend majority of time talking here, is about relationships in a professional sense. This long-term relation, akin to friendships, right? And the way you think about friendships and the way that you mentioned, Jonathan, it's a two-way street. I would also argue it's a long-term investment, exactly what you were saying as well between you and I. I've been featured on your social media as well. And now you're coming on to Boba Talks, and it's kind of this long-term thing. But it's also important to note that it is something in which you want to do for the sake of doing, and not a transactional, I need a job, therefore I need a network. Ideally, this long-term investment is really about the sake of the relationship. You enjoy talking to this person. You enjoy having this person as your mentor. You connected by playing basketball and sharing a love for helping each other. In the case of Jonathan and I, that's actually why we still keep in touch. We know both of us have a mission to help others. That's it, right? And so when and how you manage, the short-term kind of connection at surface level versus this long-term networking, in my mind, the best pressure test is to ask a simple question. Would your long-term network be willing to help you at any moment? If you have to start the conversation, introduce yourself, give them that's not really a long-term network, which is fine. Like, again, there are value for both, but that's the ultimate test you want to ask yourself. For me, just really quick anecdote. I was laid off last year in October. What did I first do? I told my network. And again, that really let me know who I had rapport with and a social kind of stock in, who were willing to help me. And I understood who wasn't sort of in that level. And again, that's totally fine. I think some of my peers came to a very unfortunate realization that they only had social connections because they didn't get any feedback or they just got sympathy. So these two cuts are important. I'm probably splitting hairs a little bit, but I wanted to call out sometimes, especially as a new grad, you think they're kind of the same, but I think for the purpose of this podcast, they're super different. But Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, I might jump in just because this one is particularly apt for my situation. So I left the corporate world to start my own business a little while ago, and It was one of those moments where I kind of waded out into uncharted territory. And the first thing that you think of is, how do I, figure this out? And a lot of figuring it out is tapping the connections that you've created and tapping your network to understand kind of next steps. What opportunities can I actually tap to, sell in my business and all these different things. And it kind of brought me back to there's a quote. I'm going to butcher the quote, but the sentiment is there that people don't remember kind of the resume that you have. What people remember is the way you treated them and the way that you acted. And I find that by looking at relationships in that lens, it really helps professionally just to understand that when you have a good rapport with someone, when people understand who you are, what you're about, and kind of why you might be someone they want to help, when they understand that, they're much more willing to go out of their way, whether that means they can directly help you or indirectly help you. So just as an example, again, when I started my business, reached out to a ton of people in my network just to understand kind of what was out there, what were the needs, et cetera. And in those conversations, not every single one of them resulted in direct business. It didn't result in hey, I talked to this person, I got this contract, woohoo, like celebrate. But what it would have resulted in was kind of furthered conversation, and that I kind of was in the back of their heads when opportunities came up, and they thought I might be a good fit for those. So the other month, I should say, I spoke to kind of an old colleague who I had a really good rapport with. What she remembered from our working together was that I helped her kind of do something, basically convert into marketing. And so just by having that relationship with her, she's now killing it and is the head of marketing at a startup. I went to talk to her, and they didn't actually have any roles or opportunities that I could fulfill. But she kept me top of mind. And then just kind of a few weeks ago, she ended up finding that the venture capital fund that funded their business was looking for kind of folks for their roster of people who do what I do. And so she immediately thought of me. I got connected with that team, and that team connected me with an opportunity. So it's these types of roundabout things where you don't necessarily have, like, I didn't have the idea that she was going to eventually connect me to this firm that was going to connect me to this company, and that's how I was going to get business. But instead, it was more of have a good relationship with people, just put yourself out there and try to have as many conversations as you can to see what comes next. So wanted to throw that anecdote out because definitely top of mind for me. What about you, Jonathan?
Yes, the best, and you hit it on the nail, Tyler and Ben. The best networking happens organically, and it happens when you mostly don't need it, right? That's why people will always ask, well, should I network when I'm trying to find a job? Yes, you should. But you should also network when you're not trying to find a job, because you never know what other opportunities might come about if you stay in touch with people, if you are consistently networking with people, just following up and just updating them on your progress. You never know what other opportunities are out there. And again, the mistake that many people make, they'll say, okay, I'm going to go network now because I need to go find a job. But sometimes when you have a job already, just start networking with people and expanding your career horizons, expanding your audience, because they might have other opportunities out there that you could fulfill. And that's what I always recommend to people. It's the best time to network is the time when you don't need it.
Exactly. No, this is great. And I think this is a really good segment. I want to move us into our second segment, which is going to be about, Jonathan, working with you and understanding, like, you do this for a living as part of Winsulting, as part of your 3 million followers. I actually have a tip that you shared with me. I forget when or how it happened, but I was going to share it back to you because I've remembered it, and I tell people that these days. But there's a lot of these really cool tips and tricks that you have. So we're going to give the floor to you. But one thing I wanted to share, you mentioned a strategy once of using the holidays to connect with people and using that as an organic opportunity to check in. And to me, I still use that tip, just to, like, be super honest. And that came from you. And what I love about it is it's not just convenient because it's kind of like during the holidays, you're slower, typically at work, you have time to think about these things, but it's typically a thoughtful time where people are also thinking about gratitude. They're thinking about kind of end of year. They're thinking about a lot of these things that feel very like the vibes match a check-in. So I've actually found that really helpful. And because of that, I actually found the job that I have now at Google when I got laid off and I got another job. It was kind of one of those check-ins where like initially I reached out to like my core network and I was like, hey, I got laid off, I need help. Great. A lot of people were helping me. And then it was closer to November actually that someone was like, hey, a person that I work with is hiring for like a technical PGM role. I think you would be a good fit. Let me, and I was like, yo, at some point I got to tell you this. So this is a really good point. These kind of tips and tricks aren't just something that's just like, oh yeah, it's a good idea to like, they have real lasting impact. So just wanted to kind of tee us up and introduce that these tips can be really, really beneficial. And Mr. Jonathan, CEO and founder of Onesalting, give the floor to you, my friend.
First off, Ben, I love that. And that's such a tangible and very simple tip, you would think, right? But most people don't do that. They will not send that email or send that update to someone about how they're doing. And when you're able to do that, you're going to be the one person who does it. To be honest with you, during Christmas time, I do have 3 million followers, but probably only 1 to 2 people will actually send me an email talking about their progress or what they've been up to. So that's a very easy way that you can not only stand out, but you to build rapport with someone, which could eventually lead to another opportunity. And it doesn't have to be like, okay, I have to reach out to this person because at the end of the day, I want to get an opportunity. No, it could just be someone who's helped you in the past. And people who have helped you in the past, sometimes all they need is, Ben, like you talked about before, is they just would love some gratitude, just saying a simple thank you. And so that's a very easy and simple way to update people. Another way to update people, of course, is whenever on LinkedIn you see them landing another opportunity, when they get a promotion, if you see that they've posted a specific post that you relate to, say, hey, like I engaged with your post recently. I really enjoyed it because of this. And people enjoy that. People recognize that. People sometimes just want gratitude. And when you're able to give gratitude, then all things will fall into place, especially with networking.
It's kind of crazy what a simple thank you will do. And it's such an understated thing to put out there. I think I've actually heard this from some mentees on Boba Talks, but sometimes they feel awkward and almost weird sending a thank you for whatever somebody has done for them, just because it's like, oh, they don't want to hear from me again, or oh, they've definitely moved on. They don't even remember this. But kind of how do you help people get over that type of a hump where it's like, I don't think I should reach out, but I want to reach out, came to mind. How do you get them to just do it?
Yes, it's the fear of rejection and it's imposter syndrome. And that imposter syndrome is when you feel like you're bothering someone because you're sending them that email or that message, when in fact, you're truly not. You are giving them an update and people are grateful for those. And if you don't get a response, so what? It's okay, right? You put yourself out there, you did everything you can to network, but the best thing that can happen is that person would respond to you and you would potentially engage in a conversation, which can allow you to see, number one, what have they been up to? Number two, what you've been up to. And depending on what your circumstances are, you can ask them if they could help you for potential job opportunity. You can ask how you can help them. And those updates are just ones where you can be able to basically bring alive again those conversations that you previously had, get an update, and then eventually get towards the goal that you had in mind with connecting with that person.
Yeah. And I was going to say, so we spent a good amount of time talking about kind of managing your network, keeping it fresh. Tell us a little bit about how to even initiate a network, how to find, you had actually mentioned how to find shared or common ground. I've watched a lot of your videos. I know you have a lot of LinkedIn tricks. So maybe you can share a little bit about that and how to even search for like who might be a good fit. And then the second half of this is once you find a good fit, how do you initiate that reach out?
Yes. What I always say is you have to find a commonality between you and the other person. And there are so many commonalities out there because people will say, well, I don't share anything in common with this other person. I mean, we all share something in common. We're all human, right? But a very easy way to do this is, for example, Boba Talks. You all have how many members do you have now, Ben, Tyler?
I think our Discord's close to like 13,000.
Incredible. 13,000. And how many people are professionals?
Many of them. We don't know. In fact,
Many.
I've got it behind me here. So we
I
can actually
see
look
it.
it up, I'm sure. Yeah, it's going. You can see the red is where I started
Yeah.
and the recording. It's always going. But yeah, we definitely have at least 100 plus mentors officially registered. And then on the Discord, you can be a mentor, but not be on the website doing one-on-one calls.
Incredible. That's an easy way to network with people. Join Discord and groups where people are sharing the same goals that you have, whether it's you looking for a job. They have mentors who potentially can help you on your job search that you can reach out to. And that's an easy way to say, oh, hey, I saw you in this Discord channel. I thought that you were part of Boba Talks. I'd love to just connect. Easy way to network in that realm. That's number one. Number two, and number one, that side is for professionals, industry professionals, professionals that you're interested in just networking and connecting with to become potential mentors and champions. The second part is people who are actually hiring for roles. Now, these are a little bit different because they are particularly hiring. So you don't have to, for example, you can build rapport, of course, but since they're already hiring for roles, you can go for a direct ask. An easy way to find these people is you just search whatever role you're interested in. Let's just say software engineer. You put hiring at the end, then you filter to whatever company you're interested in. You can find people there, or you can go to posts. You can use that same Boolean search, go to posts, and you'll find everybody who's hiring for that particular role. And to get even more specific, you just put the amount of years of experience you have. Let's just say I have 3 years experience. I'd add that to the search, and then I'd find everybody who's hiring for 3 years of experience as software engineer at Google, whatever company it is. I go reach out. I say, hey, hope you're doing well. I have this amount of years experience. I feel like it'd be a great fit. I'd love to connect. And that's an easy way to network to potential opportunities. Again, these are different than industry professionals because industry professionals aren't hiring. They are typically ones who are willing to help you, mentors and champions. The other side is the hiring managers and recruiters. Those are people who need to fill in spots. So again, you can build rapport with them, but typically they will need someone and they will respond to people who are qualified candidates who they deem could fill their roles because they're trying to fill the roles ASAP.
I have kind of a curveball question for you because Jonathan, what you're saying really resonates, and it sounds very just dialed as an approach to things. I've had some mentees come to me who feel like they've tried that. They feel like they've done the search. They feel like they've done the outreach. They're still not getting some of the traction. If this is too much of a curveball, we can definitely do something else. But I'm kind of curious, do you have any kind of more unconventional tactics that you ever recommend, or anything that you've seen kind of anecdotally work that you would share with everyone?
Yes. The question I would ask them is, how many people did you reach out to? Because typically people will say, oh, I reached out to 2 people and that's it. And that's fine. But the more times you reach out, the better chances you'll receive. And you have to make sure that that person you are reaching out to, whether it's a hiring manager or recruiter, they are hiring for roles that you truly qualify for. I think the number is around 80% at least that you should be fit for the qualifications, and that will merit the best responses. But if you, for example, are entry level and you're reaching out to someone who's recruiting for a leadership position in product, they probably won't respond, right? Because they're deemed as someone who might not be as qualified as a candidate for their role because you're entry level. Now, another way to go about it is you can do the same Boolean search, but instead, I like to do is people in their headlines will say, let's chat or coffee chat. And so I'll search coffee chat, let's chat, whatever it is, and I'll put the industry I'm interested in, and I'll find everybody who's willing to chat for free and willing to help students. And I would basically sign up for their Calendlies, their calendars, and I'd have a chat with them for 15, 30 minutes because I know that those people are willing to help the most. So that's another way that you could go about it. And then lastly is one way you can do it is, I think that one of the most important parts is the mutual connections. So if you see that someone, whether it's a professional, or this is particularly for industry professionals, if they're connected with someone who you know as a mutual connection, I would mention them, right? Hey, I saw that you know Ben, and now you're at this company. We'd love to connect. Ben's a good friend. And I mentioned this because this is exactly what I did to connect with my co-founder, Jerry, 7-8 8 years ago. I basically sent him a connection request. I mentioned that we had mutual connections, and that's the way that we got connected, because you're sharing, again, that common ground between you and the other person, and that common ground there is a mutual connection.
See, this is why we needed to have you on. I'm learning stuff all the time. I'm like, oh, that's genius. The Boolean search for less chat. People put Calendly, office hours and stuff. Plug Boba Talks. That's what we're founded on. But there are also people you want to talk to that aren't part of Boba Talks. So now I'm like, oh, this is genius. And I also wanted to add one other thing. That's how Jeff and I, my co-founder for Boba Talks, we connected as well, because I saw a LinkedIn message and he was talking about these boba chats, these one-on-one things. I was like, this is genius. Oh, he works at Google. So I messaged him on the internal side, and he was like, oh, you're at Google, so you're not like a total stranger. And I was like, hey, have you ever thought about scaling? Because like that's what I do. I'm a scaler. And he's like, all right, let's do it. So that also, these kind of shared connections can also create these type of nonprofits, consulting, you never know, a job. And I also wanted to ask you, Jonathan, before we move on, it's not core to networking, but having a LinkedIn presence, because I know a lot of the networking does happen on LinkedIn or on email, which then references LinkedIn. Can you talk about why having a robust LinkedIn profile adds legitimacy? Like, because my response to Tyler's question is like, what does your social media presence look like? What can people learn about you without responding to that email? Because these days, you never know. There's like scams of job like postings, which is like really heartbreaking. There are people who are trying to use other people. There are business dev folks who are trying to sell you stuff. So can you talk a little bit about why having that presence as a whole can actually help and lead to successful networking?
That's such a great point. And that ties into what Tyler said of why am I not getting responses? Because you need that complete optimized LinkedIn profile. Because you have to think about it as a student or as a job seeker, you have to put yourself in the professional, the recruiter or hiring manager's shoe, and say to yourself, if I reached out to me, would I respond? And if you don't have that complete profile where it just says, okay, Ben, I don't know what he does. Oh, I guess he works at Google I'm just making this up, as an ops assistant, and that's it. Okay, I don't know much about him. But if you are sharing like your experiences, what you've done in your roles, your about section, you mentioned that you're first generation, you mentioned that you come from this background, you mentioned what about your why of why you started a specific organization or you are pursuing a specific career, then you get more chances to get that commonality between you and the other person that they can relate to, which will merit into someone clicking accept rather than declining your networking connection request on LinkedIn. So that's why it's important to just take a look at your LinkedIn profile and say to yourself, if I were looking at this, would I respond to myself? And an easy way to create your LinkedIn profile is, of course, we have actually something. If you search Wendy Javier on LinkedIn, it's Consulting Wendy, it'll give you a LinkedIn profile that you can basically take a look at to see how we've optimized it. LinkedIn, hopefully LinkedIn doesn't hear about it because apparently you're not supposed to have fake profiles, but it's actually my cousin, in quotations, cousin. But yeah.
That is like the greatest hack I've ever heard to get things out there. I'm sure a ton of people will end up on Wendy's page, so you'll see it blow up after this. But I know we have to move on. I do have one more question, just because it's really relevant to what you're talking about. Because sometimes when you're sending that request, you're like, oh, we have something in common. I've got a dialed LinkedIn profile. This person's gonna like definitely respond. You send it and they don't get back. And you don't know why they didn't get back. Maybe they weren't interested. Maybe they were busy. Who knows? But you got rejected and you feel rejected. And I think when you go into networking, you have this kind of bright eyed, like everyone's going to talk to me and it's all going to work out. And these things happen. So from just a kind of standpoint of like any tips that you have, do you have any tips for getting over that? Like, what is the rejection therapy that you think people need to do to kind of keep putting themselves out there and keep that consistency going?
Yes, if you do a simple search of whatever industry you're interested in, whatever company you're interested in, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people will show up. And people get so set on one person who didn't respond. And then that will then cause your mood to go down, and you might feel to yourself, well, no one's going to respond to me just because one person didn't respond. When in fact, you have to consider, number one, not everybody uses LinkedIn. So not everybody's active. Not everybody's checking it every single day like we are. So you have to empathize with them. And number two, you only need one person to respond at the end of the day to your message to get a potential mentor, champion, or opportunity. So what I always say is the more people you reach out to, the better chances that you'll receive. But you have to be very strategic about it. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to go search engineer and I'm going to go reach out to every engineer. You have to make sure that, number one, you have a goal of why you're trying to reach out to them. Number two, you share that commonality between you and the other person. Mention that in your personalized invite. And number three, another thing is you check their activity. When you check their activity, you can see if they've been active in the past few months. And if they've been active for a week or 2 weeks, there's a better response for people there. Because most people, if you look at their activity, they don't interact with anything. That means they're not active on LinkedIn. So it'll be hard for them to respond rather than someone else who is active commenting or creating LinkedIn content.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate the insight there because I've seen it time and time again. Somebody just, like you said, that one person who you really wanted to respond doesn't respond. And then it's like, why am I even trying to do this? When in reality, there's so many things that were out of your control and just that repetition. I love the way you said it, that you only need one. That is true in so many things that I've seen. So really appreciate the insight there. I think Ben will probably kill me if I don't move us on to the next segment. So I'm going to shift us. We're going to go through a little bit of a lightning round, Jonathan. Ben and I would love to just kind of share some statements with you and just kind of get your sense of a true or false about just kind of some of the myths around networking. So I'll throw it over to Ben to start us off, but let's do it fast.
Yeah. My first one actually we talked about, so I'm going to change this on the fly. But my first statement is going to be networking is important because it guarantees that I will get the job. True or false?
Ooh, it guarantees you'll get the job. I don't think it will guarantee that you'll get the job. You still need to be qualified for you to get the job. There's two different layers, right? Because you have to consider if you were a recruiter or a hiring manager, like for example, I'm hiring right now a Google Analytics expert. I'm actually doing some interviews after this and for the next 2 days. And of course, they be a culture fit. Great. That's a part of the role, but you for sure have to have the qualifications or skills that are needed to do well in that position. Unless it's truly entry level role, then that's fine. But this role, for example, I need someone who needs like 3 to 5 years experience. So yes, networking can help you land that interview. They can help you get the referral, but to land the job at the end of the day, there's other factors. You still need to have a good interview. You still need to be able to convey your skills on a piece of paper for your resume. And when you're able to do that, then networking is going to help you a ton because you'll be able to build that connection with that person that you're interviewing with.
Exactly.
So false.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I wanted to ask, because I want to make sure while we stress the importance of networking, that it's not the end all be all in the job search. So Tyler, over to you, to yours.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite ones. If you're happy in your role, you should still be networking. True or false?
Yes, you should. You should be networking. I try to make it a cadence for me to network with someone new every single week. I'm not looking for another role, but I try to network with other entrepreneurs who are 1 to 2 steps ahead of me so I can learn from them. If you have a job that you're happy with, the networking aspect there is, of course, you can make some friends, but you can learn from other industry professionals who work in other companies. Maybe they have a specific process that you could implement to your own work style or company. And I would say networking is something that's universal. It doesn't have to be when you truly land a job. Networking can be at any time or any part of the day.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where people sometimes categorize it. Networking is this specific activity that I do. This is what I'm going to spend my Wednesday doing or something like that. When in reality, it is that kind of long-term sport where it's really just to what we've talked about kind of earlier on. You're building these connections. You're building this rapport. You don't necessarily know where it'll take you, but that's okay. You're just building kind of the bench of what you have access to in terms of just conversations. Ben, what about you?
Yeah, actually, that's a good segue. My next statement is networking is a long-term exercise.
Yes, I would say networking is a long-term exercise and it's a short-term as well. I mean, networking is definitely something where it doesn't just happen, okay, like I only reach out to them once, they answer my question, and then that's it. That's networking. No. Short term, I mean, is for example, it could be 3 months, 6 months. Long term, it could be years, like we have been, right? So when you're looking at networking, you should see it as not something that, like we've talked about, is just simply transactional, but it's something where you truly want to provide value to that other person. Maybe you see them being a potential mentor or champion to you. Maybe you see something in them which you can learn from and they can learn from you. It's building that genuine connection. So I would say that yes, it is a long term game, but you have to also look at it from a short term side of being like, okay, it cannot just be one message and that's it. Maintain that connection, send those follow ups every quarter during holidays, and that's what's going to become a true connection, and which could lead to potential even friendship.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. All right, Tyler, over to yours.
Yeah, I like this one. If you're not getting responses to your cold outreaches on LinkedIn, you should start DMing people and trying to send them emails too.
Ooh, uh, okay. So the definition of DM, like if you're saying message them on Instagram or like TikTok or a personal channel, I would say no. And I would have two buckets actually. So I'd have people who are active on LinkedIn, yes, send them messages. And if they don't respond, you don't have to email them because you already know they're active on LinkedIn, which means they probably saw your message, which would mean that, okay, maybe they're just busy. So I'd have that bucket. But if you know that someone is not active on LinkedIn, then I would send them an email. Because if they're not active on LinkedIn, sure, send them an email, introduce yourself. And if they don't respond, that's totally fine. Move on to the next person. I think it becomes blurred lines when you keep consistently sending them messages and emails expecting a response when in fact you might not. So I feel like the max, in my opinion, is two LinkedIn messages, two emails. Once you're good with that, then just move on to the next person. Maybe they're super busy and that's okay. Right. So I would say typically you don't, but it depends on the circumstance.
Makes a ton of sense. I'll share an anecdote from being on the receiving side of this actually, but one time there was a person who had tried to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think I was on vacation. I was not around, not trying to do anything. And then I eventually, got back and checked both my work email and my personal email, and I gotten separate messages from the same person. And honestly, it was just like a little bit scary. I was like, I probably would have gotten back to you on LinkedIn. Just give me a minute. I have a life. I was out and about. But that made it such a networking turnoff. I was like, I don't really want to respond to this person anymore, just because they just berated me with messages. So I appreciate your insight on that one.
And I was going to say, if you're in sales, then sure, you could reach out a bunch of times. If you're in sales only, I mean, sales is a different game. If you're trying to sell something, like not like a job seeker, but if you're a job seeker, I definitely take that approach that you were saying, Tyler.
Totally. All right, Ben, over to you.
Good segue again. Yeah, I think in sales, I think they call it business development. So it's not even like network; it's a special brand. So my last statement is networking should only be or is only valuable for those in the business field, of which sales is one of them. What do you think?
Oh no, I would say that's false. It's definitely valuable in every field. It could be medical, it could be
Yeah,
engineering, it could be psychology, whatever it is, because you never know what other opportunities these people that you network with might have for you or what knowledge you might learn from them. And you have to remember that networking is not only just about landing a job. Networking can be simply just learning from someone who are steps ahead of you, which you can learn of how they were able to get to where you want to be. And I always encourage people, if you're taking that approach, is you find someone who's 1 to 2 steps ahead of you. The reason why I don't say 3 to 4 to 5 steps ahead is because they might be so far off from where you are that the advice they might give might not be as applicable to someone who's already 1 to 2 steps ahead of you. So when you're able to network with those people, whatever field you are in, you can learn so much from them. And that's how I've learned as a business owner of how to grow my own company. Because again, I didn't know too much. It just fell into entrepreneurship at first, but I've learned, and the way I've learned is just from projects, from execution, from strategy, and just from learning from people who are ahead of me.
Yeah. I was going to say the species of humankind learns from other humans. And so if you think you can benefit from that, you should network. Or if the industry that you're in has people, which is almost every industry, you should probably network. So I know I'm answering my own question, but just wanted to add like the whole point is those things are applicable to everyone no matter what. So if you're a super technical major, you're doing academia, networking is still going to be applicable and helpful to you. So
Yeah. I'll also just add one quick thing, which is I've talked to a lot of mentees who have done career transitions, and it just wouldn't have been possible without networking. The just people who were in the sciences, for example, or people who were in physics and were in these kind of like hard science careers who wanted to move to a business career, for example, like marketing or move into sales or something like that. And it's a big transition of what your day-to-day responsibilities are, and you don't even know if you're going to like those things until you talk to people, understand a little bit more about what they do every day, and then kind of from there make your decision on what makes sense for you. So I think for career transitions, I just wanted to throw that in there because I've had like 3 mentees ask about that lately, and it's such a good idea just to connect with people so you understand what the other side could look like when you're considering those things, whether it's business or any other field out there.
well, I think that'll do it for this episode. So before we wrap up, Jonathan, tell the people where they can find you, your work, if they want to know more about Onesulting, about what you do. Apparently everyone already knows because you've got 3 million followers, but tell, just in case someone doesn't know, tell the people where they can find you.
Of course. Yes. So you can find me, Jonathan Words of Wisdom. That's my name on social media. So if you just search that, whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, and then LinkedIn's just Jonathan Javier. And if anybody's interested, it's onesulting.com. You can find some of our AI job search tools, which can help you accelerate your job search and land you job offers faster. Big thing is we actually have free tools. So for example, we have a job board AI where you can tailor your resume and tailor your resume and cover letter for free. So if any of you want to do that and apply to jobs that are actually hiring, definitely check out Job Board AI. And last thing, maybe last note is definitely utilize the community that all of you are part of with Boba Talks. You have so many different individuals like Tyler here and Ben who are giving their time to help you all, and you have over 100 professionals or mentors who are willing to give back. That's incredible. Make sure to chat with them regarding your job search, your career. Maybe you can learn from them, but also know that maybe there's something that they need help with and ask them if they need help. And if they say no, that's totally fine. At least you asked, right? So definitely utilize the Boba Talks community because it's 13,000 group community members now, might be 100K before the end of the year. And we'll go back to this and say, hey, we said that right now.
Hey,
I'm hoping
you never know.
Yeah, if basically Jonathan's gonna share some of his 3 million, then we'll get there. But no, I'll take us out of here. I wanted to end with just kind of a quick round robin of if you could tell folks to remember one thing from the conversation today, what would that be? Let's kick it to you first, Jonathan.
Yes, always remember that when you're networking, it's okay if someone doesn't respond because you only need one person to respond at the end of the day, because people are busy, of course. People might not be active on the platforms you're reaching out on. But if you can just get one mentor, one champion, one professional who's an advocate for you, that's what matters. So make sure to do that. And number 2, what I would say is utilize the LinkedIn Boolean searches that I spoke about today. I think those are very important to find particular people that you want to connect with. Another way to do it is another strategy really quickly is if you actually search for people who just got a job at the respective company that you are interested in working at, what you can do is go find them, go see who they tagged in the post, and that's typically the recruiter or hiring manager, or you can reach out to them and say congrats and build rapport there. But there's 2 different ways of how you can do that to utilize it for networking opportunities.
Fantastic insights. Love it. Ben, your wrap up.
I've got two. I'm going to cheat a little bit because one is go follow Jonathan because clearly, like I follow him. I see all the skills. I think when you see the filter buttons that he uses for your LinkedIn searches, you'll actually like it'll be very obvious, and you're like, oh, I didn't think about putting these 2-3 things together. So that's one tip. The other tip is in the networking category that we spoke about at the top, where you're doing the long-term thing. It is something that is truly an investment. To use an analogy, think of it as planting a tree together with someone else. You may never have the benefit or need the benefit of what that tree provides, as in shade or fruit or whatever, but you plant it because you want to admire and value what that tree symbolizes, which is your friendship, which is partnership, which is a relationship with somebody. So think about it in that way. Maybe you need to sit under the tree. Maybe you need to, pick some fruit and eat it one day. You never know. But when you look out your kitchen window, you want to see a beautiful tree and you want to be reminded that you're part of a community and you're part of a network, essentially, that knows what you know. So that's my kind of takeaway.
Perfectly articulated. Love to hear it. And I am so glad that I get to sit under a tree where you're both sitting under as well. So thank you guys for the conversation today. And thanks to everyone for tuning in to Beyond the Books. And remember, the best chapters in life are the ones you write yourself.
I was about to say one last thing. I totally forgot to do this. But if anybody wants free, Consulting AI access, happy to give some of your members some access. So if you just send an email to me, just send it to Muriel@consulting.com. I can see what I can do for your members.
And we'll put that in the description. Thank you. Very generous of you. See, Jonathan is a man of the people, coming on the Boba Talks podcast and just doling out Oprah style, free job services and all that. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on, Jonathan. You're amazing.
Appreciate you.
Anytime.
All right. Take care, my friends.
Thanks, Al.
See ya.